sounds great. We are back with the Inside the Block podcast, and I'm here getting to interview Hannah LeGris, Councilwoman Hannah LeGris. Is that what we say?
Yeah, council member, councilwoman, whatever.
Okay.
Or you can just call me Hannah.
You know what? I'll do just that.
Okay.
That would be perfect.
That's great.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Tell us about your work on council.
Just in general?
Yeah, or like, how I'm really fascinated in how you came to be on council. So like, what were you doing before? What prompted you to want to run? What was that process like? I have a billion questions, but you could start.
That's great. That's why we're here.
Okay, great.
So I'll start with kind of my story in terms of how I got to be on council, and then we can talk about the work of council too.
Sounds great.
So before I was on city council, I was working at the University of Kentucky. I was a career counselor, but one of the big parts of my job that I really loved was working with college-age students to help them figure out what they cared about, to discern kind of their values and how they wanted to put those into practice beyond or in addition to what they were doing to make money. And one of the most rewarding parts of what I was doing was getting young people connected to the Lexington community. So getting them involved with nonprofits, with local government, volunteering, and getting connected here in our city and in our county. And I had started my career as an AmeriCorps Vista, so very service-oriented. I'd worked in childhood literacy. I'd always tried to weave some of that, community connection into whatever job I was doing. And what I found when I was working with college students was that the more they got rooted here in Lexington, the more they understood how things worked, the more involved they got, they saw that they could make a really positive impact. And at that time, I was in my own kind of discernment process. I was doing less work with students, getting them connected to the community. And I started to think about, well, that really drives me. What could I do with that energy? And frankly, a friend of mine said to me, have you ever thought about running for office? And that's a really simple question, but being asked that question can be really powerful because it helps you think differently about yourself and your possibilities and maybe how other people could see you. And so I hadn't thought about running for office, but my council member was someone who was really accessible. So I would see him around town, like at art events. It's I'm walking around all the time. And I was like, I like Jake, maybe he would have lunch with me. So I just emailed him and I said, I'm really curious about what's your job? Like, what do you do? What does service on council look like? He said, I'd be glad to talk. And so we sat down. It was in the summer, it's like in June. And I just said, I just want to know more about it. And he was like, Hannah, he had a background in teaching as well. He said, Hannah, it's great work. You get to meet so many people. You get to talk to them about their city and what they want in their community. You get to meet so many smart people who work in government. And you get to try to put your values and their values into practice. He also said to me something like, oh, and I take a nap every day, which made it seem really relaxing.
You're like, sign me up.
I thought, I'm not a big napper, but I'm okay.
But it sounds like there's flexibility.
A little bit flexible, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And so it was great to talk to him. And he helped me kind of imagine what that world would be like. And so he said, well, I'll probably run for re-election, but if I don't, it'll be an open seat. Yeah, you should think about it. Yeah. And, there'll be other people who are running and that's okay. So when he announced, I thought, okay, well, I guess I'll go for it. And I think that sometimes people feel like you have to have a certain kind of background to run for office. You have to have a certain set of degrees. You have to have a certain life experience. And we have a whole diversity of people on council, people with all different educational backgrounds, people with all different work backgrounds. And I think that's really, really good because it helps inform the democratic process, and it helps there to be multifaceted representation on council. So I think it's good for people to know you don't have to take a certain path. You don't have to have a certain degree or have a certain career before you run for office.
Yeah, that's absolutely the perception. I mean, I would have assumed on some level, everybody on council had some sort of like service oriented or like political science kind of thing or anything that would be, I don't know, like geared more towards like I'm running for office or something. But that's, I mean, you're such a great point. I mean, you want as many different diverse perspectives to be able to inform what's on. So that's really neat.
Yeah, and I think it's powerful when people learn that, right? Because I thought the same thing. I thought, well, I didn't study political science. You know, I have a undergraduate degree in English and a master's in English. And we have people with PhDs, we have people with high school degrees, with associates, you know, people who have come from many different fields. So I just want people to know there is a path toward running for office, and you don't have to just take one route there.
Yeah, most definitely. So his seat did open up
So it's
then?
an open seat.
Okay.
And we had a competitive primary. We had a lot of really good candidates. And I ran for office in 2020. Now, when I first filed to run, we didn't know that a pandemic was
That
coming.
COVID was coming?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, with any kind of campaign, you have to be flexible, right? You have to think about what strategy is going to work. You know, how are you going to connect with people? A key part of running for office is listening to people. So talking to them about their experiences, what they want to see for their community, understanding their perspective. And in a pandemic scenario, that just had to look different. So I'm in my third term now, and each term is 2 years in length for a district council member.
Okay, good to know. I was going to ask that. I probably should have already known.
No, that's. I
Excellent.
think that this is good to talk about. So
Yeah.
there are 12 district council members.
Okay.
I represent the third district, and that's where we are now.
Yeah.
And the warehouse.
The warehouse block, yep.
is part of that, and
But you have a pretty big district though, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're UK or like you border UK.
So I have the majority of downtown.
You have the majority of downtown.
I have all of the University of Kentucky and the surrounding neighborhoods.
Okay.
And then if you think about Nicholasville Road and Tate's Creek as kind of like a slice, I have everything between Nicholasville Road and Tate's Creek all the way out until New Circle.
Dang.
So it's like 27,000 people.
Yeah.
And a lot of different kind of types of neighborhoods. And you know, there's a lot of diversity in each council district. It just looks different from district to district, but we all represent roughly the same number of people. And then you have 4 at-large members, and they have 4-year terms, and they're elected, like the mayor, by the entirety of Fayette County.
I see.
So that's kind of the breakdown in terms of constituent parts of the council.
Okay, great. Sorry, I did not mean to interrupt. So that's really good information. Again, I probably should have already known, but you run, but how did it look different? You said it was different because you had to run during the pandemic. So like how and in what ways was that like a different situation?
Yeah. So I was able to have a kickoff,
Okay.
a big party,
Yeah.
where you kick off your campaign and you generate energy, and you get your message out there. You're raising funds. You're connecting with people. So I was able to have that, and then we had to build a digital strategy. So instead of going door to door and knocking doors, for example, in my most recent competitive race, you're knocking probably at least 7,000 doors. So thousands of doors, right? Instead, you couldn't do that during the pandemic. So I had different ways of trying to generate rapport with people. One of those ways is I had this weekly segment called Let's Have a Chat. Oh. Not dissimilar from this.
Yeah.
I would bring someone in from the community who I thought was doing really interesting work and talk to them about that work. And some of that is trying to elevate someone else and what they're doing. Yeah. And then also listening and understanding, their perspective on the community. We did text campaigns, we did digital ads. We had to do a lot more on social media. And, the challenge with social media is that in some ways it can be depersonalizing. You don't get to have the same kind of energy or the same kind of rapport. In other ways, you can expand your reach and work on, I guess, your branding and framework of your campaign just from a different perspective.
So a typical campaign, I mean, like, let's say that you're mentoring somebody that wants to run like you did, is like, how did you know that you would typically knock on door? Like, is there like a playbook that a typical person would use to be able to run?
I think that people kind of start into the campaign world in all different ways. Sometimes you have candidate incubators or training programs that you're involved with. So, New Politics is an organization that helps people who have a background in public service, number one, go through the discernment process of figuring out, okay, what do I want to run for? Why do I want to do it?
Why? Yeah.
What's my story? How can I tell it? Being really grounded in your why is really, really important as you're going through the campaigning process. So that's something that we don't always talk about when we talk about the structure, the foundation of a campaign. But honestly, that grounding of your why, your driving force, your values, your mission, that really matters. So I think everyone should start there and get really clear on that. And then from there, you want to think about building a team, right? So you need a campaign manager. You likely need a finance director, someone who helps you with fundraising in various ways. You need some, in my opinion, some really good branding and marketing. So you want to think about people who can help fill in some of the gaps. Like I really enjoyed writing. I like writing. I thought a lot about my messaging. I wrote a lot of my own messaging and was really hands-on with that. Other people are not going to want to do all of their own kind of narrative building. So, you want to think about who's going to do my photography, who's going to do my graphic design, like who's going to coordinate my volunteers. How do we bring people in and get them connected? What about house parties or events? So you start to build your team, and your campaign manager typically helps you with that strategy. So you're mapping out kind of the course of your campaign from your launch all the way through to your primary and then beyond the primary. Because if you have a primary, you're basically running two campaigns.
Right.
Right. So the second post-primary campaign is going to look different, and then the other thing that's important is like your treasurer, because you want to make sure that you track all your money and that it's all handled properly. So you're really thinking about building a team and helping that team build strategy. I usually build my own team with all different people. Sometimes people hire groups of people or they hire a firm. It can take a lot of different forms. And then sometimes people self-manage their campaigns.
Wow. I mean, it just sounds like you have to think of so many things all at once, though. I mean, it's a big moment.
Yeah, it can be exciting and nerve-wracking.
I'm sure.
But I also think that it's nice to think about your network and people in your orbit and what their strengths are. And a really great thing about a local campaign is that people are really immediately connected to your work.
Sure, and you're accessible, unlike
Exactly.
like at the state or the national level. So that's really special too.
Yeah, and so you actually get to meet the candidate.
Yeah.
You get to walk around and knock doors with them. You get to have meaningful conversations, about things that you care about. And I think a key thing with anything, as you're building a team or you're thinking about your campaign, it's like seeing potential in other people. They see potential in you. They think, okay, this person can run for office. Like, I believe in them. And like, likewise, you get the chance to help people get connected to your campaign or to the district or to issues that they care about by seeing potential and passion in them.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that, it's almost grassroots in that sense. I mean, you're relying on the strengths of the people around you that already believe in you. So that's really,
and hopefully building some more in.
Yeah.
Like no matter what the outcome, I think the way I thought about it was that this process is really worthy, right? Like we're all going to do this together. We're going to run for office. And that process of running for office has its own worth. Of course, you have the goal of winning and getting into office. But, I think that you've probably seen when people get involved with something. And I think when we were at the civic happy hour, we talked a little bit about this with the filming of, or the showing of Join or Die.
Yeah.
When you get to connected to something in your community that's bigger than yourself, where you're meeting different people, you have overlapping values, you're doing something that you care about, that's energizing. And I think that at its best, a campaign can be one of those spaces.
Yeah, most definitely. So what was, I mean, did anything about the campaign process like surprise you? That first one especially?
Gosh, I mean, I guess I am. I imagine if I think back, I'm sure there are a number of things.
Yeah.
I think one thing is like going back to that why, you know, you just have to know yourself and be comfortable with yourself and hope that you can be authentic and connect with people.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, any kind of insecurities, you know, that I had from like high school or whatever else, like I had to kind of grapple with some of those because, you know, you have these things where it's like, well, what if people don't like me? Or what if I'm not popular? Or, you know, what if someone asks a question
And I won't know the
and I
answer.
don't know, navigate it. And I just think like, you know, having a network around you of people who, they don't have to be your cheerleaders, but who aren't involved in your campaign and who just know you as a person, I think that's important, right? And I hadn't thought about that much before running for office. But I think just making sure that you take time out to be grounded in the rest of your life and be an everyday person who's not totally preoccupied with this big project you're doing. And I think this goes for any big project when people get really enmeshed in something. I just think that has so much value. And this is something, you know, like I felt this way about graduate school. It could take up all the space that you give it. So making sure that you have space where you're kind of exercising or engaging with your hobbies. That's really,
balance.
that balance is important. Sure. And I guess the other thing is, you know, I met a lot of really cool people, and a lot of my team, like I had never met them before we got involved with the campaign, right? So there are some people I met out in the community who said yes to getting involved, and I got to know them over the course of the campaign. It wasn't just like, you know, a big group of my friends. There are people who became my friends, and I guess like I didn't expect that, to get to meet so many cool people.
Yeah. Well, what a great outcome, though.
Yeah, it was. It was refreshing.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. So election night happened, like your first one. Were you like super stoked, obviously?
Well, it was weird because during the pandemic, we didn't get all the results back immediately.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Because people could vote in so many different ways.
Oh, no.
So it
you're
wasn't
like pins and needles that whole
it's
time?
It's like you didn't find out on election night.
Oh.
But you know, I found out it was delayed. And then you know, then I did a speech like on my front porch because you couldn't really be by anyone.
And had it like recorded, you know, and then sent that out?
Yeah, like on Facebook Live.
Yeah.
But you know, in subsequent cycles, you can have a party, a watch party. And
did you feel like the wind was taken out of your sails a little bit with like, you're like, okay, I guess I'll go out on my porch and thank everybody?
I didn't, you know, the whole season was so strange.
It's so
And I
strange.
just thought, well, we've been creative this whole time. Why we'll have to be creative here too.
Yeah. I'm like making history right now.
Yeah, you just have to mark the occasion differently, just like we all did for everything for so long. But you know, you asked about what is the job, right? And once you get elected, you realize like, well, it's time to do the job.
Yeah. So did it immediately start?
No, you have a couple of weeks. Well, you don't get sworn in until January. So you find out in November and you get sworn in January.
Okay.
And I think the main thing is like, you have to figure out, well, I did this whole running for office thing and worked really hard for a whole year because you're basically running for office for an entire year. And now I've got the job. Well, what kind of representative do I want to be?
Yeah.
Because there's a transition point from like running for office to being in office. And of course, you're still going to put your values into practice and you have everything that you imagine that you want to do. And then you move into office and you figure out, well, how do you translate that imagining and all these conversations into action and what's pragmatic and how does this all work?
So what's the answer to that? How did you translate it all?
Well, it's a process.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I think, you know, when you first get into office, some of it is figuring out, okay, who are all these other people who I serve with, right? You have, because on council, for example, you need 8 votes to make anything happen.
Okay.
So you're not just an island. You're someone who has a vision, who has plans, who has values. You have all your constituents who you're responsible and responsive to. But then you have to figure out, well, what's the whole kind of ecosystem that I'm a part of, right? A lot of things take money and time. So I found that actually an understanding of people and listening to them and not just your constituents, but your colleagues and understanding their perspective is really important. And being on a nonpartisan governing body is great
Mm-hmm.
because we all have to talk to each other about everything. So there could be one person who you really connect with and agree with, and you guys are in alignment on one thing, on one issue, and then a totally different set of people on another issue. So you have to talk to people and try to understand their perspective. And I think that's a big part of being in office. So listening to your constituents, listening to your colleagues, and then figuring out what are all the departments where everything happens. How much money does everything cost? You know,
Yeah,
it's
of course.
getting things done is expensive. So it's like,
Yeah.
where does the money come from? Like project management. If I want to do this big project, and we've talked about, you know, some of these things like Phoenix Park. If you want to do a $4.6 million parks project, it doesn't just start with that end product. Like you have to get a redesign. There has to be public input. You know, the redesign might cost $75,000 or $100,000. So it's getting your colleagues to say yes to that.
Mm-hmm.
Then once you have the picture, okay, well, how does it come together to kind of put all these parts in place to make this new park happen? And that can be a years long process,
I'm
right?
sure.
And I think that it's a learning curve to recognize what that process could look like and then figure out how it relates to what everybody else is doing. And then to also like communicate that out into the world, you know, to your constituents, to other people, to tell the story of the thing, because that's a big part of it.
No, I'm sure. So, like for example, Phoenix Park, is that one of your most like proudest things that you've been able to be a part of? Like what are some other things since you've been in
Yeah.
office that you've seen come to fruition?
Yeah, I'm very proud of Phoenix Park,
Yeah, of
and
course.
it's really cool to see it come alive. Um, I also was involved with a big initiative for the tree canopy. I'm on the tree board. I've always been really involved with kind of environmental and tree oriented work. And we allocated $1.5 million to the tree canopy. And then I got to be very involved with shepherding those funds through. So not only making the pitch and helping with the buy-in to get that fund allocation, but also imagining what it could look like in practice. So we ended up giving out a lot of large scale grants to community organizations. We're talking about $100,000 grants, for example, to do tree planting, education, and community engagement and tree maintenance all throughout Fayette County, especially in areas where you had lower canopy coverage. And then we did private property planting. So we planted hundreds of trees for free in people's yards.
Mm.
And a big part of what we wanted to focus on was like that education part, because we want everybody to feel empowered to take care of a tree, to want to have a tree, to know what kind of tree could be happy in a certain space, and to make it so that trees can be a positive thing and not something scary, you know, where a limb could fall on your house.
Right.
Right. So like equity of access to those resources was important for us, trying to make a big impact across lots of different parts of the community and making sure that education was a part of it so that this is a positive thing for everybody involved. And, you know, it's like when you go to schools and you have like a community garden and everybody has their hand in the garden, like you learn about it and you're more invested.
Oh, definitely.
So we had some of that mentality as we were helping to put forward those grant funds. Like, how do we get more people involved to take ownership and to engage with our canopy? So, Phoenix Park was a big one, our tree canopy. In my first term, I helped with this at-home composting initiative, which is small, but it's like you get more people composting and you make it easier, and you give
Yeah.
them like really discounted composting kind of setups. It's something that was quite positive. I was the chair of the public input subcommittee, and we had a whole set of recommendations from Civic Lex that we had presented to us as council members. They did this big survey about how can we make it easier for people to interact with government.
Yeah, I was just about to ask. You were talking about the education piece, and I think that so many Lexingtonians don't, or just people in general, just don't know how to find more information,
Yeah.
what's going on, like how and in what ways they can have public input. It just seems so, just the process itself just seems difficult, convoluted almost. Yeah.
Yeah, and some of that came out in that survey. And so they had this big set of action steps. What can we do to make it more manageable for people to interact with government? How can we make it more accessible? How can we lower barriers? So it was my goal as the chair of the public input subcommittee to go through that entire document, work with my colleagues who were on it. They did a great job, and we all came together around the recommendations and put it into action. So for example, we changed our public comment process so that when you get there, you have ambassadors who are there. Hey, legislative aides, for example, who work for us. Hey, is your item on or off the docket? Let me show you the docket. Oh,
This is what a docket is.
Here's what a docket is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a banner up with all the council members. Let's see where you live and find out who your council member is. You sign on an iPad, so it's not handwritten. So then if you want to get more updates from us, or you want us to follow up, you can put your information there. Small access points can make a big difference.
Absolutely.
When public comment happens at formal council meetings, we used to have public comment for all items on or off the agenda at the end. Well, we could have voted on something that someone came to give comment on. It's like they should be able to speak before we give our vote.
Of course.
So that was something that we changed. We hired a public information officer so that we had someone who could help explain what council was doing, put out social media, put out a newsletter. So we had all these different things that we worked on collectively to help lower the barriers. We have Engage Lexington now, which is a big site where people can find out what's going on in local government.
Engaged Lexington?
Engage Lexington.
Okay. Oh, Engage Lexington. Okay, cool. I need to look at that.
And then they can sign up and get updates from us, and they can engage with surveys about big issues that we're working on. So I think some of this is about like making the information that's there more accessible. There's a ton of information on the government website, but for some people, like the access point is not clear, right? Where do you get started?
Where do you go? Yeah. How would I find my council members' information to be able to ask? Yeah.
Yeah. So we're trying to make it easier through design and through different access points for people, whether it's in chambers, in the building, or online. And Civic Lex, they also do a great job.
They do a great job. Their weekly newsletters.
Yes.
Yeah.
So good.
So good.
And, I think for a lot of people, if that's where they want to start and that leads them to the governmental pages and they start digging deeper and they start coming to council meetings, that's great. We want people to start somewhere because we want people to know, like, things don't have to happen just around you. Like, you can be engaged in the process. And if you are, it can be really powerful and empowering because we're responsive to you.
Definitely. Yeah. So there's been a couple of times where I've watched council meetings and it's been times where there's been public comment, which is wild to me. I mean, because sometimes you'll be there like hours, right? Or like an extended amount of time.
Yeah.
Because everybody who wants to speak can.
Absolutely.
From the public. And sometimes it's like, I just found it so fascinating because it would be like some people would go up and they'd say like a sentence. And then other people would come up with like a diatribe of things. So what's that like? Like, do you always like kind of, depending on the topic or the issue, kind of brace yourself for like longer sessions? And are those more, I don't know, do you get more out of those than other types? I mean, what do you get from public comment?
Yeah. So, in addition to public comment, we also receive lots of emails and voicemails. So, sometimes people come and they give public comment and they speak to us. And then sometimes they write in, they'll send letters, they'll call. So, there are lots of ways for people to give input. They can use Engage Lexington. So, we're trying to create more access points. Now, in terms of public comment, you're right. Anybody can come up and they have 3 minutes.
3 minutes. That's the limit. Okay.
But you can bring a friend, and as long as your friend is there, you could have them cede their time to you. So you could have 6 minutes. You
Is
could
there
have
a limit on how
9
many
minutes.
people? Could I bring in like 10 of my friends?
You get
and
a
have
total of 9
30
minutes.
minutes.
Yeah. The total used to be higher, but
Wow.
because council members have only 10 minutes that they get to talk, we thought, because we're timed in all of our remarks too.
Okay.
9 minutes is the max, which is quite a bit of time.
Absolutely.
And in terms of expectations for each evening,
Yeah.
sometimes you'll go in and you'll think, oh, this will be a pretty straightforward or shorter meeting, and it won't be. And sometimes you'll go in and you'll think, this will be a really long meeting, right? Because you know there's a big issue on the agenda, and you're going to be there for as long as it takes.
Yeah.
And there are some cities that limit public comment. So the number of people who can speak in a session, or the number of times you can speak in 1 month or in a period of time. But Lexington is unique, or I guess outstanding, in that anyone can come. You get your full 3 minutes, and there's no cutoff in terms of the number of people who can come and speak.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that people have their space to share their perspective. And you're right, people have all different approaches. And I think it's important to remember that, in a lot of ways, it's courageous to get up there and give public comment, because, you're in a formal setting.
It's a huge packed room sometimes.
Sometimes it's a big room. The physicality of the space.
Totally.
It's like where we're sitting at what we call the horseshoe is kind of elevated. So if you're giving comment, you're looking up at us.
Yeah.
We're looking down toward the crowd. The crowd's behind you. You're on video.
Yeah.
I've had to give, or I've chosen to give public comment in other spaces. And even I felt nervous, even though I speak on microphone and I'm in that space all the time.
Yeah.
So it's good to get up
See
there.
both sides. Yeah.
Because then you're like, oh yeah, that's, you're putting yourself out there.
It's intimidating, I'm sure.
It can be. We want to make it less so.
Yeah.
But what I want people to know is, like, when people get nervous, like, we're all rooting for them. You know?
And you genuinely want to hear what they have to say.
Yes, exactly. And we want them to not feel nervous and to feel like, I can get up here and do this, and these are the people who represent me, and they want to hear from me.
So for those people that would be like, I just can't, I could never, I'm going to send an email anyway, or instead of that, is that looked at with as much, I mean, there's something to be said for somebody standing up, with a microphone. Do you give the same weight to an email?
I think whatever works for you, you should engage, right?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I try to give equal weight.
Yeah.
I think if people are taking their time to write in and to share their thoughts, I mean, they don't have to do that. And we want to know where they're at on the issues.
So I'm sure you've dealt with a lot of negativity. It just comes with, it's like the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
So walk me through that. Like has that anything been surprising to you about any sort of like reactions that you've had to think, or to the council in general? Or, I mean, is Lexington a pretty easygoing town in regards to that kind of stuff? Or is there always sort of some conflict at bay?
I think that I have a very engaged district. So I have a lot of people who follow along with the issues, who pay attention to what's going on, who write in, who call in, who reach out to me.
Well, you have UK. Do you think that has something to say for it a little bit?
I think
too?
Yeah, I think so. And also downtown. So you have lots of different types of constituents.
Sure.
And just people who, want to know what's going on, and they want to give their thoughts and input. So I can only speak to my experience.
Sure.
So people are really involved in my district. I think that's a good thing. I think you asked about negativity or anything that's kind of surprising.
Yeah. And how you've dealt with that.
I think that So I worked in a couple of customer service type jobs. Like I've worked in the restaurant industry. I worked as a recruitment person, like as an admissions counselor, where I was the only person whose name was on the website if your child did not get into this competitive admit program.
Oh no.
So, or if they did,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And so I have in my life, I fielded a lot of phone calls. I've taken on a lot of energy. And what I always try to remember is that sometimes it's about the issue, sometimes it's about what you represent as an elected official. Sometimes people need to be heard. And I just think trying to approach these types of conversations where people are upset with like empathy and with awareness that, you know, I'm not going to take it too personally. I think that one of the most important things if you're in elected office is to do a lot of self-management. You need to do a lot of filtering. You need to be very, very thoughtful. You need to show up for people and listen. And you need to make sure that you can be your best self when you do that, right? And when I interview for my legislative aid position, the person who staffs my office, we always end up talking about empathy because sometimes when someone's asking a question or they're coming with energy, it's about something a lot bigger. You know, maybe about the thing at hand, or maybe it's about like places where they felt like they haven't been heard, or they feel like this is a place where they can have control, or they are really, really invested in the outcome. And I think usually people are upset because they care. And I think it's on us to figure out how to help them channel that energy. I guess I haven't received too much negative energy.
Good.
You know, I've gotten some nasty emails or messages or what have you, but I just try to think that, you know, for example,
Ooh.
I love Jake as a council member, right? And I would see him all the time, and I'd be like, "Oh, there's Jake. I like really like him." Like I was always happy to see him, but I never told him. Right? I wasn't like, hey,
I like you.
Yeah, I like really like what's going on, or I noticed this thing and it was really great. There are lots of people who notice things and they think this is great, but you just have to know and believe that that's out there.
Yeah, because they're not saying that as much
Yeah.
as maybe they have the courage to say something on the other side.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but every now and again, you'll get an email where someone will say, I had this great experience with government, or I went to this place and it was like, it really blew me away. Or there was an op-ed recently where someone was like, oh, I thought, I questioned how Phoenix Park would actually be, but it was great.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think that you just have to remember that even if you're receiving a lot of negative energy or feedback, that's not everyone. There are so many people out there who have positive feelings, you know?
Absolutely.
So I work with that reframing, I guess, for myself.
I think your mental health has to be so strong for a position like that. I mean, like very even keeled, and like I would take everything personal. I would take everything personal.
Well,
see, so the fact that you don't.
I've had 5 years in this role.
Okay.
So there were things I used to
pro.
get really upset about, but it wasn't helping me be the kind of representative that I wanted to be. Right? Like
you were just able to like turn it off, or did
I just
it take
had to work on it.
Yeah.
You know, and have conversations with people close to me and do some reframing. But that example with Jake, you know, that's one of those things that a friend of mine was like, well, imagine before you were on council, like how you felt. And it's like, oh, okay, I've got it.
Yeah.
The world is so much bigger, you know, and I just think there are a lot of people out here who really care about Lexington. I think it's a great place. And, you know, we're aligned in that we all want to make it better. And what that looks like can vary. But, you know, when people are giving criticism, that's sometimes comes from a place of wanting to make something better, wanting to protect something.
Absolutely. No, that's a really good point. Something that I did in grad school is a project on the urban service boundary, which I think is one of the most fascinating things about our town. And so through all of my research, I had realized, or I had found out that Lexington was one of the first city to like implement that, like in like 1955, I think.
right.
And so those were the council meetings that I would watch, because it was like 2-3 years ago when it was decided to expand. I mean, it was a hot topic back then. Can you speak to that? Like your
Yeah.
thoughts on the urban service boundary, if you'd like, or just like the hubbub that surrounded that at that time to be able to expand it, and what you think?
So that was one of our biggest votes. I was one of the few people who voted
Against it.
not to expand
Not
the
to
urban
expand it.
services
Yep.
boundary. And, I think it's one of the most important land use decisions that we can make here in Lexington, right? There are all different ways to approach our need for housing, our need for commerce. And when you think about levers or mechanisms that can be pulled in order to create more space for that, you have infill, which is developing on the interior of the urban services boundary. And then you have expansion, which is taking undeveloped land and developing it. And I think something that we're looking at right now is a process for how to do that in the future. So rather than it being kind of incumbent on the planning commission and the council to make that judgment call, they're looking for ways to use data, population data and the like, to figure out when and how and where the urban services boundaries should be expanded in the future. So I think that's a good conversation.
Definitely.
And I think really valuable. For me, I represent, I guess, the most dense district in Lexington. And I am an urbanist. I think, having solid and multifaceted public transportation that works well, having the ability to walk and bike, and if you want to drive in a connected kind of urban environment, is really important. I think you probably saw some of my statements at that time, talking about my
I quoted
stance.
you.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
With the urban services boundary. And my thought was that, just like the simple rule of supply and demand, I don't know if that's going to meet the need that we have, but we need to make sure that we're getting as creative as possible in the space that does exist within our city, so that we can have infrastructure that's supported where our city already exists. And we're filling in some of those gaps, with housing, with commerce, with some of the infrastructure that we need to make Lexington the best place it can be. So I also grew up in a rural area in Mason County, Kentucky. And the way I feel about the environment is like, once it's gone, it's gone.
Totally.
Right. So we need to be really, really, really thoughtful about and strategic, exactly, about how and when and where we do that expansion. Mm-hmm. And so I felt like it wasn't the right thing. But I think that, now that we are moving forward, we have the opportunity to think about how we build thoughtfully in this expansion spaces, and create a process for how we move forward.
And I love that it's data-based. Like, I love that it's heading, I mean, it should be empirical,
That's right.
Yeah.
And so I think that whole conversation created like a good opportunity for us to think about the future differently. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that people comported themselves really respectfully during the whole expansion process. And that was a great example of like, we can be in really different places on this issue, and we can say and share our perspective, and we can do that in a way that's mutually respectful.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many, the public comments on that too were just, there's like all of these thoughts about either expanding or not expanding that I would never have thought, everything from like wildlife, and so I mean, all of these different important facets that, I mean, it's just public comment, again, it's just like so wildly important, because it's like, oh, I didn't realize. I mean, at one point there's a woman that went up and said something like, if you do this, like, it takes away, this ecological system that we have. And, we have everything from badgers to bears on my property. And I remember being like, bears, like in Fayette County. So it's like you're just learning like things left and right when you have the community really come together on and discuss like the different points of these issues. So
That's right.
yeah.
And then it usually is multifaceted.
Yeah.
I think it's really easy, with some issues for people to say it's this or that. But
exactly.
there's a whole range of experiences on the in-between, or people who maybe have conflicted feelings, or, they're imagining what could be, and they're trying to think about where we are now and what the future would look like, because that's what we're trying to do too. Like, how are we building the city that we want to be in, not in 5 years, but in 10 and 20 years, because these types of land use decisions, that's the kind of expanse of time that we're looking at. We're looking at decades into the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. And is that what the comprehensive plan is really supposed to do and be? And what is the comprehensive plan for anybody like myself that needs a refresher?
The comprehensive plan is the guiding land use document for the future of Lexington. Okay. So, we're thinking 20, 25 years into the future. And on the table, it was the initiative that helped drive this comprehensive plan. So people were coming together, talking about what they wanted in Lexington, and all that data and all of their input was gathered all across Fayette County in order to inform the comprehensive plan. Now, they had a lot of other input sessions, but that was one of the major kind of factors in informing that comp plan. That drive toward infill, protection of the environment, areas of the plan around equity and access. Those things were all community driven, as well as, shaped by our planning department and commission and council. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's really a document that's formed by the people. And that's another thing, like, we have our downtown master plan right now, which is something that I helped push forward. And one of the reasons why it's so expensive is because we have a big allocation for public engagement and public input, like meeting people where they are, getting their input, understanding their perspective, getting that all down, helping to put that into a big comprehensive document. That takes time, people, and money, but it's so essential because we don't want a situation where it's like, well, you planned about us without us,
Ooh.
And because that's not what we want. Yeah. We want the people to help build their community.
Absolutely. So the other council members, do you guys like go out and like hang out a lot together, or are you good friends, or?
We don't hang out a lot. I mean, we spend a lot of time together at work.
So you're like, I'm good. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes, yeah.
Do you get close with council?
Yeah,
you kind of have to because you're together so much?
Yeah, you have people that you have all different types of relationships with. Like, sometimes you're really connected over certain issues. Sometimes you're friends, sometimes you hang out together, I guess, outside of work. But I've thought about this a lot recently. Like, council's an interesting group of people, and it's been different. My first term was different, second, third term. So there are people who, maybe I would never have gotten to work with otherwise.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like we're all kind of in this together, and we're doing our best to represent our districts. And so we have a unique understanding of each other and our workflow. And like you said, sometimes there are really long nights,
Yeah.
or sometimes you're in meetings, you thought, oh, this will be quick. It's like 3 hours, So I think that you have a lot of time and together, but also like empathy for other people and like what they're trying to balance with their districts, with their own values. Yeah. So.
Yeah. But everybody's up for re-election next year.
Yeah.
I feel like I heard you say that.
So 2026 means that, everybody is on the ballot. So for those of us who are district council members, it's every 2 years. But for the mayor and at large, because it's every 4 years, it syncs up, so that.
So 2026 is everything is
year.
synced? Yeah.
Yeah. Some councils have it, they have it staggered, but we don't.
Okay. So are you going to be starting up a new campaign? Can you tell us?
I mean, that's everybody is starting to announce it's like the time, but people don't file until January.
Okay.
So this is the
Stay
other
tuned.
thing. This is the other thing that's part of the process. In order to get your name on the ballot, you have to do what we call passing the petition. And so you have a petition signature sheet. And if you're running for state office, you only have to get a couple of signatures. But if you're running for local office, you have to get 100 plus.
Okay.
So you have to go door to door and connect with people, and you know, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Put yourself
Absolutely.
out there.
I figured you just like leave yours at like Mirror Twin
No,
or something
no.
like that. I'd be like, sign up here.
No. You go door to door.
You go door to door. Well, what's
talk to
that like
people.
though? I mean, you just show up and knock and
Yeah.
they're like, and are most people pretty?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, most people are pretty nice.
Okay.
When you first run for office, you're an unknown, and they're like, "Well, who are you?" And
Yeah.
like,
And
"Why
what
do
are you
want-
selling?" Yeah.
Why do you want to do this?
Yeah.
But it's a good way to check in with people. You get to talk to them about what's on their mind and answer questions. And it's like when you go to neighborhood association meetings, like you have a different kind of rapport because you're around the table chatting. So there are people who maybe wouldn't have like emailed or called, but they have questions and you get to answer them. So I think about that kind of door knocking as in a similar space. Like you're coming to them.
So how long do you give yourself to go door knocking? Like 4 hours a night, and then how many?
Well, it depends on what time of year it is, because sometimes
Oh, I didn't even think of
so
that.
usually you do like 2 or 3 hours at a time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But you don't want to get into like, you know, dinner time, bedtime.
Right.
So you just have to be thoughtful about people and the flow of their day. People don't like it when you knock during a UK game either.
Oh, I'm sure.
Just being honest.
It's
So
like
you need,
not a good time to go.
yeah, like they're like, ugh. Number one, why aren't you watching the UK game?
Yeah. Now I'm not voting for you.
Yeah.
Are you not a fan?
Yeah. Or like, ugh, why did you interrupt my, my viewing?
So one other thing that I wanted to ask you too, though, is you'd mentioned balance. What does that look like for you? I mean, well, first of all, you told me the other day that being on council is a part-time position.
It is.
Yeah, so it's like a part-time job essentially.
You're
right?
paid part-time.
You're paid part-time.
Yeah.
But really, you're not working you're.
Yeah, especially depending on your district, or like for me, I'm on 9 different boards. So in addition to all of our standing meetings, I serve on Downtown Lexington Management District Board, Arboretum Board, Tree Board, Land Trust Board. So I have all of these additional service aspects that I do. And then sometimes you get, additional work, or you're working on projects with those boards. So in my first term, I worked another full-time job in addition to council. And now I do like freelance work. And I've done some teaching while being on council. So my balance is a lot more managed now.
That's good.
So I think that it's important that you do things that make you outside of your work. That goes for any job, I think.
Sure.
But you do things where, for me, I like to exercise.
Yeah, I was going to
like
ask,
to
so what does
hike.
Hannah LeGris look like outside of
I
all
love
of
to
this?
walk my dog.
Okay.
I like reading. I've had some moments where I've gotten very involved with pickleball.
I hear that.
Good third space in the
Yes,
community.
it's a very important thing, the third space.
Yeah. So I try to be active. I love being outside. And then, spending time with my friends and family. And I like having some friends who are like, don't know much about, they're not interested in my work.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure. Yeah. That has to feel
you
like a
have to-
decompression.
Different
too.
conversations.
Absolutely.
And so I just think, having other activities that you do, it's important.
Yeah.
You know.
And you're right here next to the warehouse block, which is really
I can
nice,
come
too.
over. Yeah, I can have a beer at Mirror
Yeah.
Twin, or
Yeah.
slice of pizza, or 2 different types of barbecue.
I know. There's 2 now.
Yeah.
It's wild. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to live next to Billy's Barbecue. Then I moved over here and have had 2 different barbecue places. So I'm, no matter where I move, there's got to be a barbecue place.
I think they're following you. is
Yeah,
what it
they're like,
sounds
where's Hannah going?
Oh, she's walking her dog
Yeah,
again.
she needs to smell that barbecue smoke.
She needs a sandwich.
She's hungry. She's been
hungry.
sitting in chambers, for 4
And
hours.
hugging the trees.
Okay, that's the one thing. Like, I'm not great at this, but if you're going to be good on council, you need to be packing lunches or something, because sometimes you don't know like how long you're going to be there.
Yeah.
And
I'm
we
sure.
have some snacks, but
Yeah.
there's only so many like
That's a really hot tip. I
like
like that.
Cheetos or whatever you can eat. It's not
Yes.
good for you.
No. So you got to be packing like a little mini charcuterie, something to sustain you. Yeah, right. like fancier.
Totally.
Things. Yeah.
Yeah, or just a sandwich, peanut butter and jelly, whatever.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah, be prepared, you know?
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Oh, thank you. It's fun.
Yeah, I learned a lot. And who knows, maybe one day somebody I know will run for council. Definitely not me.
Well, I just think asking that question, have you ever thought about running for office?
Yeah.
Is, like I said, it's a really powerful question.
Yeah.
And so I think as people are getting more involved in politics at every level, just kind of, you know, again, tuning into the potential in other people and asking that question. Because even if someone, maybe they run for office, or maybe it causes them to get more involved, or maybe they volunteer on a campaign. And all of that is like so important to our democracy and just to the health of the civic health of our communities.
Completely agree. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.